the establishment, people. And therefore they could not say, I don't want a Jawaharlal Nehuru's quote, because after all, could Indira Gandhi say that? And yet, the quotation was pregnant with meaning. So all kinds of things had to be adopted. And many of us had to resort to listen to BBC on a daily basis to actually know what's happening in the country or the world. In those days, I remember Lal Krishna Advani, after emergency was lifted, freedom was restored, the then newly formed Janata Party came to power in Rajasthan, in Madhya Pradesh, in UP, in Bihar, in every state within 1,000 kilometers from Delhi. In every single constituency, Congress Party lost. It was one of the most remarkable verdicts in Indian or perhaps global political landscape. And we as young people were exultant with joy, ecstatic. Lal Krishna Advani said about the media. He said, when you're only asked to bend, you prefer to crawl. It's one of the most insightful comments about the media. So until we know the threats to freedom, we don't understand its value. But now what happened? Let's fast forward. Whatever I mentioned to you is well before you're born, and I suspect in many cases, at the time when your parents were children. So you may not really be able to relate with that except through history books. In the 1990s, when there was this proliferation of media, which was an anvil, because new channels were going to come, the government could no longer forcibly stall technological progress or innovation. Therefore, it was evident that in place of one Doordarshan, we'd have many channels, and newspapers luckily already were there. I was one of those ecstatic. I was one of those truly happy, thinking that if only we had another BBC, if only we had another NPR in India, if only we had many other such media which really promote public discourse of quality, how rapidly the country would be transformed. You know, in my more angry moments now, I actually think, and sometimes I even say in somewhat indiscreet manner, if all these channels are shut down, the country probably will be better off. Obviously, it is an outburst of frustration. But we have to reflect. Why? What is it that made our public discourse so coarse, so superficial, so substandard? Whereby, as Einstein said once about 20th century, he said 20th century is characterized by perfection of means and confusion of ends. With better and better technology, better and better of everything, because we live in the best of all possible worlds. The means have been perfected, but why we do this, the purpose of this, somewhere we lost sight, and media is a classic example. A classic example. The general problems of media are universally known. There's too much of cacophony. During freedom struggle, when a Mahatma Gandhi, with his feeble body and with his low decibel voice, could still be heard very loudly across the country because there was moral strength and there was no cacophony. Whereas today there's too much of noise. Sanity is drowned. Mark Twain said once, often a hen that only laid an egg cackles as if she has laid an asteroid. And we don't distinguish between the egg and the asteroid. We determine the value by the cackling, the noise levels. So what am I seeking? Let me just say this and then we'll go off the interaction. Let me take you back to about 200 years ago. In the year 1819, a man called Semmelweis was born. Anybody heard of Ignaz Semmelweis? Ignaz Semmelweis. Okay. 1819 he was born. Semmelweis, he rose to be a physician. In Austria, Vienna, he was born. He became a physician. In those days, medical science was what it was 200 years ago, you can imagine. Among other things, he discovered, actually it was very well known at that time, that about 30 to 40% women died during childbirth because of childbirth. The causes were not known. They called it in general puerperal fever. They had no idea of bacteria, infection. Puerperium is the period surrounding childbirth. So, some death unexplained, surrounding childbirth, and about 1/3 to 40% women died during childbirth. Let the number sink in. Don't think of a number. About 2/5 of all women, they died during childbirth. They cannot be, by today's standards, there cannot be anything more catastrophic. By serendipity or by some experimentation, for whatever reason, he discovered one simple thing, that if you washed your hands, in those days with carbolic acid, with whatever was the equivalent of today's soap, if you washed your hands properly, before assisting a woman in labor, a mother in labor, during childbirth, and if you again washed your hands properly before going to another lady who needed that assistance, he discovered that this mortality rate, which was 30 to 40%, came down dramatically to 1 or 2%. He did not know why. It was an observation. He made it a mission of his life. He said, look, let not women die like this. This just is not right. And here is an answer. I don't know why, but I know it's an answer. He did not try to persuade the people. This is important for the media folks to understand. He did not even try to persuade the people. He tried to persuade the fellow doctors, fellow physicians of Europe. He pleaded with them, please wash your hands before and after attending a patient. I don't know why, but here is the evidence. People are saved. Lives are saved. Many, many lives are saved. You know what the doctors did? The fellow doctors in Europe? They laughed him off. They said, you're telling us to wash our hands? What rubbish. You're insane. How dare you tell us this? You think you understand medicine? And this man was obsessed. He was passionate. He wanted to save lives because he discovered something. They branded him insane and institutionalized him. And even today, I don't know if you've seen a film that came well before you were born, One Flew Over Cuckoo's Nest. It's a famous film. It's about how in mental institutions people are completely 30 years ago or so, 30, 40 years ago, how you have an extremely rigid and totally unhelpful environment. So 200 years ago, if you're in a mental institution, the only way you treat it is beat the hell out of you. He was brutalized, beaten up, ultimately died of those injuries at the age of 46. What was the issue? One man discovered something incredibly important that could save potentially the lives of millions of women. As simple as that. While one enlightenment came, for that to become the norm, took the sacrifice of one human life of extraordinary quality. But within 30 years, 3 great men came, Robert Koch. Even today, you all heard of Zika virus?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How do you know Zika virus causes microcephaly that these people are saying? It's not because somebody suddenly wakes up and says, hey, it causes microcephaly. There are certain postulates. To say that something causes something, there are certain rules of science you have to follow. They were all established by Robert Koch. Louis Pasteur, you heard? The pasteurization. And the man who came up with the first vaccines and all that against rabies, etc. Louis Pasteur came within a generation, along with Koch. Lister, have you heard? Mouthwash, Listerine, is named after Lister. Within a generation after Semmelweis, whose very simple, practical appeal was ignored and he was revived. But within a generation, the medical profession accepted that, embraced that, and since then, sterilization, understanding of bacteria, prevention of disease became the norm. But please remember, because media was not there, or it did not play the kind of role it should have played to propagate an individual enlightenment into social consciousness, humankind paid an extraordinarily heavy price. As human beings, what we should see, whether it's in politics, something else is, can we rapidly accelerate this transfer of understanding? An enlightenment of an individual, can it become the consciousness of a society so that we maximize the benefits of that instead of paying a huge, stupid price? That to me is the test. Whether it's corruption, health, lives, quality of education, sanitation, environment, whatever be that. Can that become the norm of society so that we do what it takes to make our lives better? There's nothing more, nothing less. There's no more noble, no more pious thing. It's about making our lives better, more livable, more harmonious. Judged by that yardstick, I suspect when some good things are happening, we could do a lot better. And that's the perspective in which I wanted this interaction. We could say all lovely things, wonderful things, nice things. Let me leave you with one anecdote. Somebody like the current Pope Francis, a wonderful human being, he was visiting the United States. You must have heard this story. The people want him, his media advisors want him. He said, Your Holiness, America is a dangerous country, media is very tricky, they're very difficult to handle. Be very, very wary of what you say. They trap you into something and then publicize it disproportionately and embarrass you. He said, all right, forewarned this, go on and I'll be careful. He landed in JFK in New York, and a bevy of media persons was there, and they all surrounded him and kept badgering him questions. And one of them said, Your Holiness, what do you think of the red light districts of New York City? The Pope thought for a second. He said, how do I get out of this? He said, here's the Pope, a lifelong bachelor, dedicated to God and accepted celibacy. For him to be asked about red light areas is a very embarrassing thing. He said, are there red light districts in New York? All they asked is, are there red light districts in New York? Next day there were banner headlines, Pope inquires about red light districts. So media can be a potent weapon for good or for bad. It's a choice that we make. Do not confuse between technology and substance, between the medium and the message, between the eyeballs and the outcomes. It's a tool. We can make it do wonderful things. We can mess up our life as a society or even individually. The choice is ours. Right now, the tendency appears to be to use it as a toy, to enjoy it, to revel in it, to seek relevance, salience without substance, and to not do what this is capable of doing to transform our society, our attitudes, and most of all, our institutions, and therefore the outcomes. My hope is that your generation, because you are into this technology, and we have today democratizing tools, it's just with a flick of a button, you can acquire knowledge. You can spread the message to millions of people. Anybody. It doesn't require a prime minister. Are we capable of using it wisely to make life better for your generation and the next generation in a country which is particularly badly served by human institutions? In a country whose potential is immense, whose fulfillment is subpar. That really is the challenge. Thank you.
Can I have my mic working right now? Thank you. So we can now certainly start with an interactive session. So you want to initially ask some questions or let the students do it?
Let them, as I said, much more than what Rashida says.
Anybody want to start off with a question?
As an exception, I'll allow you, but I want youngsters to participate. No, as an exception, you start off. Somebody will start off.
Sir, you have very rightly said, but I think there is a crisis of trust among the people, among the institution, among the states, among the politics and so on. So now the values are coming down day by day in all domains of life. How do you take this challenge and what do you find the problem? How can we get over it?
So, if I understand the question, you're saying the values are declining in all walks of life. How many of you believe that? That values are declining, they used to be much better during your parents' time and grandparents' time. Today, somehow the values are declining. Please raise your hands, those who believe that. Those who disagree that the values are declining, you have to say this or that. You can't simply be, all right. Those who say they're declining, will you please give me your version? Why? Why do you think they're declining?
Can you have the mic?
I'll come to that. I'm not trying to evade the question. I want an honest introspection so that it leads to something.
I'm Rohin. We have multiplied our position, maybe we have multiplied our knowledge, but we reduce our values. That's what
it is tautology. You are simply repeating the statement. Why do you believe, and what is the evidence to believe that values actually have declined?
So that's what we talk about the discipline, we talk about the manners. So I think what knowledge has to do when we have no manners, but not discipline.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Anybody else? Values have declined. It's a very profound statement. Why do you believe so?
Are
you also faculty?
Yeah.
Are the kids all warned not to speak? Because the vice chancellor is there, you're all scared? Now, after him, the kids turn. Okay, you must open up. If you don't question, if you don't debate, discuss, allow it to enter, we become automatons. Please.
Okay, for example, if I go through this one, the parent and the children relationship, the relationship which my father enjoys with my grandpa, or the dedication he has, dedicated his life for him. I don't think so. I have not even dedicated a quarter portion of my life for him. So that shows a lot of change in the value system. I think so. Taking example from me and his relationship.
Okay. Those who believe values have not declined, the few, will one of you?
Not the faculty, only the students. Can you have the mic?
No, I'll come to the faculty also. I'm not censoring you. I just want to encourage the young people to serve. Please forgive me if I'm a little rude. I don't intend to be. Yes, the young man there.
Good morning, sir. My name is Shubham. Sir, I don't believe the values are declining. I believe they're transforming according to the time. Earlier, there was a concept that we need to respect our elders no matter what they do. But now, if you notice in our generation, we don't respect elders based on their age. We respect based on their actions. So that is what has changed. But it hasn't declined, it has transformed.
Anybody else?
We can take certain we are taking the cultures and religions to some right? Like in America, the children call the father's name with the first name, right? It's more happening here also since the time of media. So because of media, that's what.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes.
Good morning, sir. I'm Shaurya. Sir, I completely agree with Shubham. I believe in the olden times, people, for example, when we take work, in the olden times, people work because they have to. They have to work because they need to feed their families. But now, for a youngster, he might work because he wants to. So that is something I believe is applicable currently, and that is why I believe the people, the mindset has changed and they don't believe the values are declining.
Good. Let's examine it a little deeply. Yes, sir.
So my name is...
Microphone. Yes.
Good morning, sir. My name is Ignaz, and I understand that this is basically related to, we can say, case by case. If you talk to my father, his moral values, his decisions is still intact. There is no change in his values. So like, if he wants to do a certain work, he will go as per his plans, as per his policy, as per his norms. But if something has to be done from my side, I'll say, चलिए कर लीजिए इसको दे दीजिए जो भी करना है हमको इसको निभाना है करना है. So I mean, what I feel that it is more like case by case, rather than when you say that it's not the time which has changed the moral values, but it depends on each person's individual working style.
Thank you. We have forgotten one important thing. What is the meaning of values?
So she wants. Can we have the mic?
Yes.
Hello sir, my name is Krishna. Sir, what I don't understand is why all of us, when we talk about values, we relate it to our parents or children. Values are not just that, in my opinion. Values can be how I behave with a person my age, a person under my age. Values, in my opinion, are compassion, kindness, and those I do believe are declining. Because you don't go to a random stranger and expect kindness like you used to do in the earlier days. So definitely, in my opinion, the values are declining.
Just one second. Like before we proceed, we are talking about values and all, but the main topic is the media and
No,
politics.
don't reveal it. You don't worry, you just leave that part to me. It is with everything else. So, don't, it will not be waste. Okay, now, what do you think are values actually? How do you define values? Is it because Ten Commandments says so? Is it because the Bhagavad Gita says so? Or something else? Or is there some yardstick, some talisman? This is a value, this is not. How do you say what is a value? Anybody?
Set of beliefs.
Pardon?
Set of beliefs. What you believe, I might not believe, and it varies person to person.
If they are so variable, if each sect, each faith, each religion, each social group determines its own values, then we are talking at cross purposes. What is decline for you is actually elevation for me. It doesn't help us. So there must be some universal norm, right? So what would you think is a universal norm to determine what is a value?
According to me, it is a set of rules, the legislations which have a universal acceptance, and these type of things must have a positive impact on mankind.
Okay. Two, because Mohit is getting very worried about time. let me shorten this with timing. Let us say, whether you are European or Indian or African, male, female, of Christian faith or Hindu faith or Buddhist or Islamic faith, doesn't matter. Let me postulate that there is a set of values based on one central principle, and that is, each of us is free to do what pleases us, what benefits us, but there's an important caveat. If I, in pursuit of my desire and happiness, end up undermining Mohit's desires and happiness, then that is not right, because if each of us indulges in that behavior, it becomes socially destructive. Therefore, the pursuit of my goals cannot be at the cost of the other's goals, and hopefully, if the furtherance of my goals also furthers his goals, then that is something valuable. It is about the link between the individual and the society, that there cannot be a zero-sum gain. The gain for one cannot be the loss for the other. And that's the reason why whether religion or society or tradition or even law, they all enforced or try to enforce or encourage a certain code of conduct. But the central principle is that if I, in pursuit of what I believe is good for me, do things recklessly, if others in the process are hurt, then that doesn't help us. Is that a fair, workable definition? You all agree? Then society, once it determines what are the values, enforces them by religion. Almost all religions, in their own way, they are trying to say, sometimes they are right, sometimes they are wrong. For instance, some religions, including Hindu religion, they permit incestuous marriage in good faith. That you can marry your own cousin, or you can marry your own niece. They did not mean anything bad, they didn't know. Religion allowed it. But today we know better. But the intention is that what you do is not going to hurt the society, everybody is going to benefit. So religion, society, the family, the traditions, the respect you have, the sabhyata, the sanskar somebody is talking about, or the law. In the olden days, in agrarian communities, isolated communities, and everybody knew everybody else, there was no impersonality. Everybody could be related. I know Mohit is so-and-so's son. He is from so-and-so khandan. So if Mohit misbehaves, the khandan's pressure is there. I mean, see, if I badly behave, what will happen to my khandan? See what they think of me. They all know me. See, these social pressures and religion, they control our behavior. But as life became more and more impersonal, urbanized, the social controls could no longer be that effective. There is this anonymity, supposing the lights are off suddenly, I'm certain there will be one or two capped calls and whistles. The moment there is anonymity, the moment nobody knows who is who, then sometimes we, out of fun or something else, do deviate from the behavior that is acceptable. Is it true? So with the urbanization, this is inevitable. That's where the state and the kind of legal framework and the rule of law framework are critical. If you view from that, sir, to answer your question, values are eternal, they don't decline. We have roughly the same proportion of human beings today in our society and in all societies who have this inner moral compass to determine the link between individual behavior and goals and the societal goals, and try and moderate their behavior so that the society is not hurt in pursuit of their goals. You also have today, as we had earlier, just as there was Ram, there was Ravana. People who put their desires, their goals above the society's goals. The plunderers. We also have them now, we had them then. The difference is then the social controls, religious controls, they all worked adequately to keep the individual excesses in check. Today they collapsed and we didn't build sufficient rule of law structure to keep our behavior in check. So what happens, the 90% who will change their behavior this way or that way depending on the context, opportunity, risk and reward, they feel that look, honest and good behavior is actually painful and it is losing. Bad behavior is beneficial. If a Gonda becomes MLA, if a corrupt fellow after retirement is given a seat and made an MLA or a minister or MP, and if a good person is transferred over 25 times a month, if an honest businessman is harassed by the taxman and looted, and if you bribe, you get a license and you grow. If you don't bribe, you don't get it. There's no fair competition. If that's what society is teaching every day, then a majority of people say, look, this is what gives me a benefit, and another conduct makes me lose. I want to maximize the benefit. They move in the direction. And then we think, my God, values have declined. Values do not decline. Behavior is altered because of risks and rewards. It is our duty, and media has a central role, Mohit. That's why values question is not peripheral. If you understand values, it's our duty to figure this out and make the society realize and to build institutions and instruments in a manner that the risk of bad behavior is increased and the reward for good behavior is increased. So values question actually is central to whatever we do in public domain, in particular public domain. Private domain is not that important. It is important. But public domain is all about values ultimately. It's all about encouraging a certain kind of conduct and discouraging certain kind of conduct. And that's why one of the greatest liberals of all time, Gladstone, said the purpose of a government is, and this is the link with politics, the purpose of a government is to make it easy for people to do good and difficult to do evil. There cannot be a more apt definition of government. We have forgotten that. Our media today made politics a circus, a power game. Tu, me. We've forgotten what it's all about. That's a tragedy of the country. That's why, believe me, even if we don't discuss anything else, if we really internalize this honestly, if we figure this out properly, we have really understood all about public life and media. I have spent a lot of time on this deliberately because I didn't expect this question. But I think it's a good one. Because it clears up many things in our minds. What to do, what not to do, like Gandhiji's talisman. Many things in public domain, what to do, what not to do, we are thoroughly confused. We have a bunch of well-meaning idiots across the country, in politics, in bureaucracy, in media, who are well-meaning. I don't doubt their intentions, but they have not figured it out. And therefore you see all kinds of garbage paraded as discourse and doing immense damage, because the damage you can do with magnifying power of the modern communication tools is as great as the good we can do if we do it the right way. That's the reason why I'm here, honestly. Okay? Now, I promise you I will not take this much time. Other things. Let's have it.
Can you answer the next question? Siddesh, Kalpana, do you have a question? Yeah, Kalpana. Can you have the mic to Kalpana?
Can I follow up the same question?
Please, anything. If Mohit allows you.
Yeah, but like you talked about, if I follow some value, what I think is good for me,
and at the same time I do not hurt you or your feelings. So who is going to decide the limit that what shouldn't hurt you? For example, I say I'm agnostic, I'm doubtful about God, and you are completely into God. God is there, God is present everywhere, join the hands. Doesn't matter whether I believe in God or not, but you'll ask me to join hands. For you it's good, but for me, I doubt God. I do not know whether He or whatever kind of form is there or not. So at the same time, I might hurt you, but it is good for me that I know God isn't there, but you might doubt my feelings that I have lost values in God or religious belief that my grandparents have taught me. So how do you think values have deteriorated or?
But thank God for that reason we have the Constitution. At least in countries like this. Because what you believe, what you practice, what you profess, what you preach is your private business. And nobody has any role in that. Not the state, not the rest of the society. Equally, what the other person believes, preaches, practices, professes is her belief, is her business. As long as you don't compel them, they don't compel you. If I am an atheist and say you shall not go to a temple or a mosque, that is nonsensical. If they are theists and they say you must come to this temple or this mosque, they are nonsensical. It's a pretty simple ratio, there is no problem.
So it is said that power can be intoxicating. You were an activist and a bureaucrat before you became a politician. So did you feel that intoxication when you got into power because you were an MLA? So
luckily, in my case, first of all, MLA is an inconsequential figure. We only made it very consequential.
Did it change anything inside you?
Or an MP for that matter, by the way, in this country. It's all a make-believe thing. But luckily, in my case, no, because I joined the IAS, which was really more powerful than all these. And the IAS is certainly incredibly powerful. People of those two states, they know how much of power I exercised and how much of goodwill I enjoyed. I never thought of it as power. Because I didn't join the government for a job, I didn't join it for power. It was a last-minute decision after I finished my medicine because of pre-emergency, emergency, post-emergency situation and the angst. So that's despair and angst when somebody says, why don't you join the IAS? I said, why not? So I never really, it never occurred to me. It's not an opportunity, it's a burden. And believe me, if you are a sensible human being, if you don't have public office, you are a very happy man. If you have public office, there is a heavy burden. For a truly decent human being, power is an immense burden because now the other people's lives are now, you're responsible in some way. And two, you cannot take care of yourself. That is the equation of power. The moment you have power, your personal goals, your family, your properties, even honest goals, not only dishonest ones, honest goals, pursuit of your own personal family goals, which is your right and duty, you cannot, really speaking. Whereas everybody's problems become your problems. So I don't understand why people want power for power's sake. I'm amused, I'm aghast, I'm shocked. I'm absolutely astounded that people in India, from a panchayat ward member to prime minister, there is this desperation, this hankering, and after doing that what? Or even IAS officials or other officials, you want to get into a position, you ask any secretary to government, what is your vision in this particular agency or department, next 3 years or 5 years, what will you do? Summarize in 2 sentences, 5 sentences. No, nothing. I just want that. I want to be there. God knows why. Because we are a hierarchical society, we worship power. Indian culture and society have tremendous strengths. I admire and love them, but we also have glaring weaknesses. One of them is this desperation for recognition, hankering after a position without any purpose, and this lust for power and control from a family, not merely in politics, in a family, the way the father tries to control everything, what you do, where you go, whom you talk to, how you manage the funds, to the country. This is one thing we have to get out of. If you want to be a democracy, it's not the constitution alone, it's the way we behave. With a person who is serving us at home, cooking at home, the chauffeur in your car, we don't do it. It's unthinkable to allow them to sit at the dining table with us and eat. Because this hierarchical culture, this inequality by birth, has become integral to our thinking. And unless we break out of that and bring back dignity of labor, and that power is a nuisance, it's a burden, you do it as a duty with reluctance, and you would be delighted to get out of it if somebody else is doing it well. Unless you bring back that kind of ethos, this country is going to be messy. It's not really politics and politicians. Okay?
So can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Emergency changed your life practically.
It made my life in every which way. Without emergency, I would have probably been a public health worker somewhere in this country or maybe globally, I don't know what. But I would have been working to minimize disease and suffering. I would not have thought of public issues.
So the main question that I want to ask that was an explicit emergency. It was declared, right? The media was banned. I'm talking about the media right now. The recent ban on NDTV, it's now on hold. The recent ban on NDTV. The government.
That's a different thing. This is the problem. We must have perspective. Nobody's freedom is absolute. Your freedom as media persons is no greater than my freedom as a citizen to speak out. Don't put anybody on a pedestal. Somehow media, or politicians, or bureaucrats, others, we have a notion, an attitude of putting ourselves on a pedestal. Where under the Constitution does it say media is above everybody else? Article 19(1)(a) is what gave you freedom of speech, right? The same freedom is available to an ordinary villager, to a newspaper, to a TV channel, to a prime minister, to a minister. No more, no less. Now, that I have freedom doesn't mean that I act recklessly to get the eyeballs to endanger the freedom of the rest of India. I do not know about NDTV in this context. But I remember, I'm sure quite a few of the seniors here remember, when the Bombay attacks were happening, the way the television covered 24 hours live, giving information as to who is where and what's happening to the fellows who are controlling the terrorists, undermining freedom. They didn't do it willfully or viciously. I'm not saying that they really wanted to destroy India. They did it recklessly and foolishly. Now that I did it recklessly and foolishly doesn't get better consequences than that I did it willfully and maliciously. And again, as Mark Twain said, Mark Twain is wonderful, you know. There's so many things he says so eloquently. The knowledge that the dynamite that has laid him out is of inferior quality is not a sufficient compensation to a corpse. Do you get it? The quality is good or bad, the fellow is dead. So I don't know if NDTV is guilty or not. I don't recall the details, but I know for a fact that I cringed when I saw that coverage. I saw the irresponsibility of it. I'll give you another local instance. In the then Andhra Pradesh, one notorious politician, a gunda and a murderer incidentally. And if you go to him, he has his own story where he became a gunda. Actually, a film came about him. I'm not now judging him. That's not the issue. I'm simply putting in a context. He himself was murdered when he was in opposition as a legislator. Both are murderers. His group and the opponent's group. And the usual, this fellow from one party, that fellow from another party, clashes, these things. What does one channel say on live television? They contact a correspondent in a district and say, how are things? That fellow says, this is the things of tents and some demonstrations, protests, EAO, burning of refugees, all these things. He said, they're burning the buses in that district. Are they not doing it here? Within 5 minutes, they started burning the buses in that district. I will shut down that channel, trust me. So don't take anything as absolute. I don't care which channel it is. You have no business to undermine public order. You have no business to undermine national integrity.
So my next question will be, the ownership of the news channels by, Reddy family, for example, right? Manu Sharma's father, Sakshi TV in your region. Can you talk something about that? By the politicians?
Honestly, it's a problem. Honestly, I don't have a perfect answer. What are the possible answers? There are 2 good answers as of now. I'm sure you can think of many more good answers. The first is, as long as there is true competition and there is no monopoly, As long as we as citizens have the right to buy or not to buy, right to use our remote and flip the channels. If the competition is real, then society is safe. That is one answer, the market and freedom. But even that is not a sufficient answer, because in a world where the conglomerates have greater and greater monopoly power, even if the law allows competition, in reality the marketing power belongs to the big. The bigger you are, the greater control you have. From mobile phones to software to media, the greater networking, greater synergies, the greater power. And therefore what countries like the US attempt to do, I'm not an expert on the subject, but I think you do well to study that in depth. They try and see that A, there are no cross-holdings. If I have a significant print media presence, I cannot then take over electronic media. And even the presence in a certain kind of medium cannot exceed X percentile in market share. These are arbitrary numbers. Obviously, who will say 30% is okay, 32% is not okay, but some kind of an arbitrary thing. Somewhere the good people get together and say, let us say on the current sector, some kind of a ratio. And they enforce it pretty vigorously. That's why if somebody takes over some channel in the US or a newspaper in the US, it doesn't become automatic. It still has to go through the regulator to get the approval. So if these two things are there, true freedom and competition and choice to the consumer of the news or channels, and some kind of a regulation not to allow excessive monopoly and cross-holdings, probably are reasonable safeguards. Because if you give more power to the state, then the state becomes oppressive. If you don't at all look at what is happening, then the media becomes monopolistic. So somewhere you have to strike a reasonable balance. There is no perfect balance, but I think in India we haven't looked at it at all. India, to the best of my understanding, there is no regulation of that kind at all.
Yes.
Mohit, I want to start. If you allow me. Because you just mentioned this term nationalism. My question is related to that. And so far, I have failed to define nationalism. Is it a geographical boundary? It is a political order, or it is a personal feeling, or personal affiliation, or coexistence? What exactly it is? Because we know in the history that extreme nationalism has generated 2 world wars. And wherever the extreme nationalist feeling is growing harder and harder, there is a sign of ethnic war also. So how do we justify this term? How we define it in present context when the cyber technology has eliminated all kinds of boundaries, cultural boundaries, political boundaries, geographical, economic, everything. Then how do you define nationalism?
Terrific question. Actually, honestly, this is a great audience. I never expected these questions. I'm happy because I've given a lot of thought to these issues, sometimes spoke about them and wrote about them. I'm delighted. But let's go back to the origin of nationalism in Indian context. Let us, while your question is a generic one globally, let me put it in the context of India. That will make it easy for us to relate to it, though the answers are universal. What are the foundational principles or the anchors of Indian nationalism during freedom struggle? Anybody? Just give an idea. What made Indian people of various castes, regions, religions, languages, all kinds of cultures and traditions and literature, what made this disparate, incredibly complex and diverse, vast continent slowly begin to think that we are all one as a nation? What are the underpinning issues? Young people, you have studied history at some stage or the other, at school, national movement, EAO. Let us see how much you sort of internalized or tried to think.
British oppression.
Okay, so there is some kind of a feeling that a foreigner, this foreigner feeling, somebody came, and there is racial bigotry on the British side, on our side also. It's not entirely on their side. Please remember, we said he's a mlecha. You all understand the word mlecha? It's the ultimate pejorative term in Hinduism. That he is simply, is not even undercast or something, he is simply not acceptable, just not acceptable. is a paradigm. So it is that feeling on our side and their sense of racial superiority their side. Definitely one important underpinning. Any other factor? What were the factors that bound us together? Come on. Everybody talks about nation, Bharat Mata, you, what is this? I mean, come on.
Sir, I think it is injustice which was which was too much spread all over the country and which has brought all the people together.
A sense of economic exploitation and other injustices. Now, for instance, Rajni Pamda wrote about many of those things. The other hand, Nauroji, poverty and British rule of India. In fact, the origins of the liberal freedom struggle were really economic. They did not make it racial or something. That came later. The other hand, Nauroji is in fact the foundational man. And while he was a member of parliament in Britain, he wrote very logically and rationally about it's un-British rule. That's his argument. You are British. You are the essence of civilization globally, but your rule here is uncivilized, un-British. And he established it. Rajni Pamdar did a great job too. So that's the second one, a rational approach. What are the other underlying things that really propelled us?
It's basically a quest for a recognizable identity that I have a particular identity coming from.
It is tautology again. You already have a caste identity, regional identity, religious identity. No. That is after the fact.
Mutual feeling of helplessness, maybe?
That's already covered. Sense of exploitation. I'm making some very controversial, sometimes painful comments, but I'm doing it in the spirit of genuine and honest introspection. So don't feel offended if some of the things I say very softly, but just because things are said softly doesn't mean the meaning is very, very not sharp. So I'm one of those guys. I say things very softly, but what I say could be extraordinarily explosive.
I think the common purpose. Redefining common purpose.
Yeah, you're defining nationalism. What are the things that underpin? What made a villager in, let's say, Rajasthan or in Tamil Nadu or some other place say, I'm a nation? What is it?
Activism. Activism. Gandhi's activism.
You are all imputing your contemporary words and discourse and this.
Gandhi.
Huh?
Hello sir, my name is Nikhil Sharma. So I think I love my nation and this makes us like Indians. अगर हम किसी से अगर अपनी nation को प्यार नहीं करेंगे तो फिर and the other country like Pakistan.
What is this nation that you love?
It's the whole India.
What does it mean?
Like I want to join army and I want to protect it from other countries like Pakistan and.
So easy, gun or you kill Pakistani and this nationalism?
No, so right now I'm doing my job like media person, so I can protect them from by this option.
So you kill that fellow or give badmouth that fellow, you are a nationalist. He kills you and badmouths you, he is a nationalist.
So like he's also following his rules and I'm so.
So it's tribalism basically. This tribe attacks that tribe attacks this tribe.
Yeah.
Okay. Next. No, let's really focus the searchlight.
Nationalism is born of conflicts between the cultures that we found, and in order to defend the culture, one.
No, don't think too much. Just see what happened. I'm asking you historically, what happened? In those 70, 80, 90 years, 1850 to 1947 or thereabout, what happened to bind us together, to create emotion, that absurd, that sense that no, kuch karna hai. Vande Mataram, remember? Vande Mataram shook the country. What is Vande Mataram? Idolatrous sense of patriotism. And Sharma says, I'm a patriot, I love India. In his mind, he has an India map or Bharat Mata. And I have to protect, I have to defy, I have to defend Bharat Mata. Idolatry, because that's part of Hindu ethos, idolatry. There's another factor, cultural atavism. I am putting words to it now, the phenomena. You hark back on the imaginary or real past and invent the golden ages. When the British were wearing these skin clothes, we had a great culture and civilization. 3,000, 5,000 years ago, we were at the pinnacle. We had golden ages. Our astronomers were great. Our Charaka or Sushruta or Bhaskara or somebody. So you're harking back on a past, atavism. These were the underpinnings: intellectual patriotism, cultural atavism, a sense of economic exploitation, and racial bigotry or a victim of racial bigotry. If you are truthful, it is not about building a great society, though some people fought for that, but that was not the dominant strand. Some of the acts of our nationalists were the most irrational and obscurantist acts. Take the Chapekar brothers. There's a film also, June 23rd, 1897 or something, do you remember? You guys don't watch films? These are about Chapekar brothers, when they killed a British officer. Why? When there was a plague epidemic in Pune, this poor British officer, he brought all these people, quarantined them so that he could protect from infection. There was no antibiotic at that time, but the new plague would kill and spread like wildfire. And that means all caste distinctions are erased and everybody had to eat together. And that offended some of these people, and they said, how dare this British officer make us all stay in one place and eat one place, and he shot him down. That was hailed as an act of patriotism. Have you heard me? Yes, sir. Tell all these nationalists. If today also we have the same notion of patriotism, understanding of nationalism, we are going to be in trouble as a country. That was necessary perhaps at that time, when a proto-nation was being developed, when a vast, disparate subcontinent had to come together with the feeling that we are one. Some of those things were necessary. Every nation is built on certain myths and certain realities. But now, our notion of nation should be citizenship. It should be about fulfilling human potential. It should be protecting the human values and freedoms and human rights. It should be to make sure that every child has a chance. Unless we redefine nationalism in contemporary context, if we go back to the same old idiom and thought and emotion, then it becomes you versus me, and you always find enemies. The two cases that you mentioned, the world wars, the Hitlers, what happened? The moment you say the other is the cause of my problem. The solution does not lie in me, my actions and my institutions, but it lies in the other, the enemy. Whichever society, a state, a sub-state, a region, a nation, whichever society subscribe to that, whether it is Hitler or Donald Trump today. Luckily, Trump is no Hitler. Hitler believed in what he said, he acted on that. Trump is a crook who wants to get elected. He got elected, he will not do that. And therefore, America and the world are safe. If Trump is a Hitler, America and the world are in danger. We are lucky. He's simply an unscrupulous politician, that's all. A little more unscrupulous than many others. But the broader point is, the moment a society or a tribe collectively is made to believe that the other is the enemy in the modern world, you have a disaster in the making. Now our nationalists must try to figure out, how do we define nationalism? Every child getting a chance to get good education, fulfilling her potential. Everybody not suffering needlessly to the extent that you can eliminate suffering through modern technology and resources. Enjoying freedom and harmony in society and nature, and holding head high. Is that nationalism? Everybody getting a proper sanitation facility, a toilet. I went as a child to the fields outside to defecate every day. That was my lot. Now to me, that is dehumanizing. That is a humiliation to a human being. I had no choice. If you define nationalism in a manner that is compatible with what is good, what is collectively beneficial, and what is compatible with the rest of the world's good, then that nationalism is fantastic. If your nationalism is something where it's a zero-sum game, just like we discussed earlier, the values, remember? The same principle holds here also. Until Pakistan is demolished, there is no nationalism in India. Until I want destruction of those 200 million people, there is no nationalism. And I hear some I'm sure there are many people, and educated people, whatever education means, quote unquote. I heard somebody say in social media, if you want India to prosper, be prepared to lose 100 million people in a nuclear war with Pakistan. Are they nationalists? They are Rakshasas. They are disgraceful human beings. They are a disaster to this country. A 75-year-old fellow saying that 100 million Indians, you be prepared to die for the nation. Anyway, the fellow is going to die. I am going to die very soon. We are all in the later part of our lives. But to say that is nationalism is the ultimate disaster. So young people, as I said, I am saying softly, but these are very sharp things. Think. Think. The other is not the cause of our problems. In your home, in your village, in your residents association, in your city, in your state, in your country, the other is not your problem. The way we structure our society is our problem. Because luckily we built a world wherein even America is not a problem to the rest of the world. Even they can't do much. In North Korea, tiny, piddly country, is saying boo to America, America doesn't know what to do. So we are no longer living in a world where the other is a problem. And there can't be a greater asymmetry than United States and North Korea. So it's not, our notions of patriotism should not be based on that silliness. It's vulgarity. Does it make sense, or anybody wants to pursue it? Yes.
So we're running short in terms of, can you ask questions just after the session if that's okay? So will that be okay with you? If they ask question after the session? No, after, because we're running short.
You want to close the session?
That's fine.
Okay, let him at least have this chance.
Okay, sure.
Namaste, sir. My name is Nikul Dashoria. Sir, as we are living in a democratic country, the people here are governed solely because of the actions taken by the government. So now the feeling of anarchism is developing in some of the people. Like if they want to do something higher, like they want to pursue something, and the external and powerful forces are letting him down. The feeling of anarchism is developing in those people. So how can
could you elaborate? I couldn't follow your example.
Briefly. The example.
What like my friend, he's a rapper. He wants to do rap in his particular field, but now the society doesn't allowing him to do such kind of events. So the feeling of anarchism is developing in him because of the external force which is forcing him to not doing so. So my question is, how can we develop the feeling of nationalism in those kind of people?
How could you develop? Last question.
The feeling of nationalism in those anarchist people.
How can you develop a feeling of nationalism in those kind of situations?
Now they want to live their own life because they want something.
Let's first go back a little bit again. Nation is an artificial construct. Even society is an artificial construct. Evolutionarily, all that matters is your life. At the end of the day, if there is a crisis to life, there is no water, there is no food, and somebody is going to kill you, what do you do in a war, like for instance? What do you do? First, defend yourself, right? If need be, kill the other. Yes or no? Don't tell me you're all people who will die at any cost. No, that's not the way. That's not what you're wired. You first want to live. Then you want to propagate your genes. Therefore, you take care of your children. The next generation. This is, every animal does it. There's nothing very unique about it. But because we are human beings, we necessarily have to have a society because we are fortunate. Because we have the gift of language and speech. This is what distinguished us. In evolutionary terms, this is what made us different from all other animals. Why? For the first time, an animal has a unique capacity to accumulate knowledge. Follow this carefully. Accumulate knowledge. Transfer knowledge to the peers. If I put my finger or a hand in fire and it burned, now I can tell Mohit, hey, don't put your hand in the fire. Mohit doesn't have to put his hand in the fire. Prachaksha Pramana versus you have seen others suffer or they told you, Anumana Pramana, I think that's enough. 3, transfer vertically from